Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today is going to be an unveiling of my newest campaign, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition, The Shattering of the Shield. And I had the pleasure of running a game session on Friday. It was our first true game session where five of my players came in and they started to unravel the very first elements of their new campaign. So, what I thought I would do here is I'll do a brief recap. Excuse me. Do a brief recap of it, and kind of preview where it's potentially going to go next, so that when my players come in and they actually watch this video, they'll be able to have some idea of some of the prep work they might want to consider for this upcoming Friday's episode. So, without further ado, I'm going to switch views here and go right to Roll20. This is a campaign that's running and using Roll20 initially as theater of the mind. We haven't actually gone into any maps or dungeons and such. So without further delay, let's go right to that. And let me switch views here. Sorry about this. Let's see. There. Sorry about that. A little disorganized. New format for XSplit, so it just recently updated, and so I'm trying to work out the whole new format. So here we have the map, and this is what the players basically saw, and the characters that came into play. I'm going to shift. Oh, I can't shift him out of the way. I was going to shift him to the other side, but anyway, we'll continue forward. So the player party actually began in the city of Critwall, right down here. It's the capital city of the Shieldlands. Although all five of them were actually garrisoned out of this location, Jensal, right here. The characters: Michelle Arsenault is a fighter, played by War Turtle. Actually, War Turtle will become his character's nickname, and there's a whole backstory behind that name, so that's to come in a future episode. So we have Michelle Arsenault, the fighter. We have Sir Cedric the Cavalier, played by Ben. We have Varys Nilo, a ranger, played by Gerard. We had Sir Tyrande, a female paladin, played by Jack. And we had Titus, a cleric of Foltus, played by Titus. Also, a little bit later on in the during the episode, the players were introduced to an NPC, Cedric Rodan, who is a magic user and a member of one of the noble families of the Shieldlands. They haven't quite gotten how he's connected to anything that they were dealing with yet. Just that he was also in Critwall during the events as they unfolded. So, what were those events that unfolded for the player characters? The Order of the Shield had two basic components, and actually I could switch views and go back here. The Order of the Shield had two components. It had the Holy Knights of the Shield, which were basically paladins, cavaliers, and some fighter clerics. As long as those fighter clerics were clerics of Heronius, which is the principal deity of the Shieldlands and its ruling class of paladins and knights and such. So those were the basic three admittees to the Holy Order of the Shield. So the Order of the Shield was a subdivision that allowed for ordinary fighters, clerics, magic users, and rangers to join the Order of the Shield. Thieves and thieves, monks, and bards, barbarians were not accepted into either of the orders. Now, as the war that they were currently involved in started to take a more dire turn for the Shieldlands, the knighthood began to admit more and more of these other character classes into the Order of the Shield. And as the war continued to move on, they began to tip the scales back in their favor once again. And it was solely because of the introduction of these combat classes that were willing to take things a little bit more focused on winning rather than focused on following the order's normal edicts of behavior and such. Let me close this. I had some new pop-up come up. I'm not going to bother doing that right now. But anyway, so this is the background of what the player characters have been immersed into. And so they're in the capital city of Critwall, and the Order has called its committee together to start contemplating getting a new commander for the entire Order because the previous commander had died. And then also determine, now that the war is over, determine what they're going to do with this other subdivision of the Holy Order of the Knights of the Shield. And so there's basically 2 or 3 camps amongst the leading generals that that are either vying for control or at least vying for there to be either a peaceful resolution for this or a separation of the order. No one is actually clamoring for there to be conflict. Excuse me. And so the player characters are there as part of an entourage of their commanding general from their garrison of Jensal, and their commanding general is a high-level paladin, and so they kind of assumed or believed that his take on the issue would be to support the idea of the order going back to its more traditional setup as being just primarily for paladins, cavaliers, fighter clerics, or clerics, I should have mentioned that, or clerics of Heronius. And all others would then be removed from the order and allowed to go their merry old way. The players were left off with still not knowing where their commanding general actually lies on that. But what occurred while they were there, while there was a much heated debate over, how to move forward, another general had stepped forward and said, "Hey, let's take a break from this. Let's take a breather. We've been going at it for 6 or 8 hours already into this evening, and let's reconvene by the next afternoon." And so it was agreed upon, and everybody started going to their staterooms. And of course, obviously, possibly a cliche, but there was an assassination. And that a different general had been assassinated. And when they reconvened the next day after the big alert took place, in the wee hours of the morning and a lot of rumors spreading around and everything, the belief of the player characters was that the first item of business was to be find out who actually killed this person or who might be involved with this general's assassination and such. But that's not what the Committee of Generals had done. Instead, what the Committee of Generals had done was they said that they would move forward with the plan of voting on both a Lord Commander, for lack of a better term, and also to vote on this possible separation of the Knights of the Shield. They then gave a ultimatum or a proposal to the collective group that anyone wishing to walk away now should just do so. And the player character's commanding general decided that he would take that option. And that really struck them by surprise because he, being a paladin, and if the way that the order was moving towards was the more traditional holy order of the Knights of the Shield, then he would have stood more to gain by remaining in. And yet he said that he was going to leave with the member of his entourage who chose to follow him and move forward, from there with whatever they're planning on doing. And that's a situation where the player characters are now currently sitting. They're sitting there amongst themselves, trying to decide where they're going to go next. What's the next move? And as a DM, I'm kind of sitting there waiting to see what direction they would like to take the party into. So this is a very open world way of running a campaign. I basically wait to hear from my players which direction they want to go in, and then when they tell me this is where we're looking to go, then I start to create some minor events, some small seeds of ideas of which direction they might want to go, or multiple directions that they could go in. That will then either advance the main thrust of what they're looking to do, or it could lead to side tangents that take them far away from whatever they're looking to do, or kind of a meandering way to get to where they're looking to do. So, there's several options that are going to be open to the player characters, or the players, I should say, and I'm just as excited, and anxious to see what direction they want to go in, as they probably are in wondering how is this overall story going to play out. So so in my opinion, that's the way that a major campaign should actually be run. As I have a general idea, a framework of an overall story that's taking place, but even I'm not crystal clear of how the players are going to interact with that, underlying story. How are they going to either advance that story, or they might even totally break up that story and not pursue it at all, and then we go into a new direction. So as I said, as a DM, I'm really excited to see what direction they choose to go in. I hope that they pick up on some of the elements that I put in there, But if they don't, that's just the nature of things. It's always a good idea not to over prepare as a DM for where the characters are going to go in the next session, and certainly not a good idea to under prepare either. You should have a few little seeds to go and try to meet the players' expectations as best you can. I will say one thing. So, a couple of the players I've played with before, and they, of course, the one was really happy with it, the way it was going. The other didn't quite feel so much that it was what he was looking for. One of the new players also expressed the same thing, like he was not expecting it to be as political as it was in the very beginning. And that's just either a disconnect in our communication, which I will take the blame for, and that I should have said that, hey, there's probably not going to be that much action in this very first session, because this first session is setting up basically the tone of the early part of the campaign. It's laying down some of the storyline that that is a very malleable storyline, in that they're getting just the very basics, and then what they're going to do will impact that. Or because I did say that verbally when we first started, that there's not going to be a whole lot of fighting, or maybe even no fighting, going on during the course of this session. And but now that I know that when that player returns, that he was looking for a little bit more involvement in the action going on, not just making a couple of perception and wisdom rolls, and questioning NPCs, and trying to using charisma to extract information and such. That's what most of the first session was. The second session, I think he wants more hands-on kind of interaction, and there certainly will be some of that in the next session. So, and that's another thing, as a DM, you need to be responsive to some of your players' desires for either what they're doing, or what they want to do with their character, or what level of action and what kind of action do they want to see in their game sessions. And you should never fully, cater to only what they're desiring to do, but you should try to, keep enough of that in there to keep them coming on back. So, once again, session number 2 is coming up this upcoming Friday. I'm looking forward to it. And if any of my players want to leave a comment here and say that, hey, this is a direction that I'd like to see it go in, feel free to, put that out there. Otherwise, just send me a private message on Roll20, and we can handle it that way as well. And if you also want to respond on this video and say what your impressions of the early part of this campaign are, you're certainly welcome to do so. I encourage you to do it, and I'm really anxious to see, what you thought. Especially in writing, it would be nice to see what you thought right here on this video. So, once again, for those of you that are following along, or hope to continue following along with this campaign and how it lays out, please leave your comments as well. If you have any suggestions for running a campaign like this, if you want to see actual gameplay, then let me know, and I'll see how I integrate actual gameplay from our gaming session into a video recap such as this. Or if you have some ideas, or you want to know anything about running campaigns in the world of Greyhawk, or just with AD&D First Edition in general, please feel free to leave those comments there. Once again, thanks for joining. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. There will be much more content like this, and I'm going to continue my AD&D First Edition hardcover reviews of each of the books going along. I have 3 or 4 books to cover, and the next one will be the Wilderness Survival Guide, followed by Greyhawk Adventures. All right, so I will actually tear through this book here, and by James M. Ward, and who's still very active on social media. So you can find a number of things that he's doing there on Facebook. I strongly recommend that you follow him on Facebook because he has a lot of stuff going on, and it's always great to actually read some of his comments about the various game products that are still out there, and and he's a great writer, and this stuff is really, really cool to follow along as well. So that's coming up in the next few days, actually. I'll probably get to this book sometime this week. Today might be a double video day, so just be looking out for the Wilderness Survival Guide, which will probably come out this evening. So once again, thanks for joining. I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. You all take care.